Hello, Lucy and Conrad and Caleb. Papa and Spider-Man are back with another X-Men adventure. Remember the last time we saw the X-Men, they met and defeated Eunice the Untouchable. Well, in this adventure, Eunice is back, this time with the Blob. Do you remember him? He's another of the X-Men's opponents. And you know what? There's also an encounter with Lucifer, who was one of Professor X's opponents from years ago. So this is a packed issue full of adventure. Let's look at the cover. All right, this is the X-Men, and you can see that Eunice and the Blob are dressed up in X-Men outfits, robbing a bank. That's not going to be good for their reputation. And then the other adventure going on is Professor X versus Lucifer. And this is a story that's going to explain why Professor X no longer can use his legs and rides in a wheelchair. So this is going to be a packed issue. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. The title of this is I, Lucifer, but the story begins with a bank robbery, which itself is a somewhat unusual event, but when the pernicious perpetrators are attired in the garb of X-Men, the resulting tableau might be considered positively unique. All right, so we have the Blob talking to the banker, and he says, "You're the big razzmatazz of this joint, ain't you? Well, you got exactly 10 seconds to open this vault, or else us X-Men will pull it down around your ears." The bank manager says, "But I couldn't open it now even if I wanted to. It has a time lock, and it's set for 10 o'clock, which is more than an hour away." Well, Eunice is there, and he's got a baseball bat. He says, "All right, all of you stand back. I can do more damage with this baseball bat than a Homo sapien can do with a Sherman tank." And over here are some of the other bank employees. They say, "It's a holdup. Why don't the guards do something?" They can't. Those hoodlums have threatened to harm Mr. Filbert if they so much as make a move. Well, these bystanders realize these are two new X-Men. I never saw their pictures in the paper. What powers do they have? And goodness, here's more talk. This is the first time I ever heard of anybody robbing a bank with a bat. Well, yes, I guess so. And yeah, but if anybody can pull it off, they can. Uh, Dear me, I always said those ridiculously costumed mutants were up to no good. And the question is, what powers do they have? And this fellow says, "I don't know, lady, and I'm not going to rush them to find out." Okay, what's going to happen next? All right, and so we're back to the Blob. He says, "So the vault can be open till 10, huh? Well, here's where I upset your pretty little schedule. Me, I never was much good at waiting." And the bank manager says, "You can't break in. It's impossible." Nothing's impossible for an X-Man, Rube. And so, reek! The Blob, with his strength, pulls the door off and the gate as well. And the alarm goes off. Dong, 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 dong. And so the Blob picks up a big money bag and says, "Here, partner, I did the hard work so you can carry the loot." "Be glad to, pal," says Eunice. "For that kind of menial labor, you can count me in." The guard now reaches for his gun. The big guy let go of Mr. Filbert. Now's my chance to take them without endangering anybody. So he pulls out his gun, and he says, "I've never claimed to know very much about this mutant business, but I do know that even the X-Men aren't bulletproof." Crack! So he shoots off his gun. Well, you know what? The Blob is bulletproof. Thack, thack, thack. The bullets just bounce off of him. And Blob says, I don't know where you're getting your info, Rube, but I think you better take another look. The guard says the bullets sink right into him, and then they pop out again. The Blob is this very large fellow with impenetrable skin as well as strength, and so he is indeed bulletproof. The other one doesn't look so invulnerable. Wait, what gives? He shoots at Eunice. Well, Eunice is bulletproof too. He's untouchable. So, pwing, pwing, the bullets just ricochet off of his force field. And Eunice says, hey, partner, get this joker off my back, will you? And the guard realizes he's surrounded by some kind of force field. And as the bullets ricochet, the bystanders say, duck. So they try to get down so that the bullets don't hit them. And Bob says, no sooner said than done. Here, buddy, that little toy won't do you any good with us anyhow. So he grabs the gun, scrunch, and he crushes it. The guard says, my gun, it's demolished. You guys aren't human. Never said we was. Cuddles, we're mutants, remember? Says the Blob. Meanwhile, the clanging burglar alarm has not gone unheeded, for here come a squad of policemen. Okay, boys, move in on them. Use your clubs. From what I saw through the bank window, guns are useless. We'll take them, Captain. They can't lick all of us, but you know what? The clubs aren't going to do any good either, are they? However, as the incredible imposters emerge from the building, says the policeman, we can't even lay our hands on him. Oof, as he falls back. And Eunice says, of course not, fools. Nobody touches me unless I allow him to. And so here we see Eunice one more time with a big money bag in his hand. A few feet away, we've got this one, Captain. The policemen all grab the Blob and try to wrestle him down to the ground, but that's not going to work. He doesn't have a force field, but the Blob says, who says I need one? I got other ways of handling things. The policeman says, you're talking through your hat, mister. We've got enough men around you to corral an elephant. Well, the Blob is more than an elephant. Blob says, maybe so, but you ain't got nearly enough to hold on to the Blob. So that's who he is, says a policeman. No wonder. He tossed us off like so many rag dolls. And now, if you don't mind, I gotta be moving on. Give my regrets to the Joe that owns this car. And look, he walks across the car and he just crushes it. The policeman says, I see it, but I just plain don't believe it. Eunice says, come on, chum. We gotta go join the rest of the X-Men. What's going on? These guys are dressed like X-Men. They're pretending to be part of the X-Men. That's not going to do the X-Men any good at all. The next moment, they drive off, and the policeman says, come back here. Come back, I say. Did you see that? Not only did they rob the bank, but they also made their getaway in Filbert's limousine. Mister, from what I've seen, I'd say we're lucky they were only after money. All right, men, into the police car. No matter what happens, we're going to catch us some mutants. Fine, says a policeman, but then what do we do with them? That self-same instant, as capricious fate would have it, one of the real X-Men has just made one of the most difficult decisions of his entire life. And look, it's Scott Summers, and he's closing up a suitcase. He's thinking, there, I've done it. Until this second, I would never have thought I could find the strength. But I'm leaving the X-Men. That note I left will explain the reasons, or at least some of them. For how can mere words ever hope to express all that I feel in my heart for Jean? And yet I have I the right to feel this way about her, while my eyes make me a threat to all I encounter. That's why I must go, to see if somewhere I can find a doctor who can rid me of the menace of my deadly eye beams. Until that day, the world shall hear no more from the one it knows only as Cyclops. And so, look, Cyclops is leaving the X-Men. He's walking away from Xavier's school. With these thoughts, the tragic form of Scott Summers disappears into the distance. Inside, unaware of his unheralded departure, we find the other X-Men. Angel says, "Want that book, Jeannie? Let me get it for you." Jeannie says, "Don't bother, Warren. You forget my telekinetic power can bring it floating down to me at will." And Iceman is saying, "Hey, group, catch this crazy scene on the boob tube. It'll floor you." "Come now, Bobby," says Hank. "Must you persevere in such boisterous exclamations while I'm studying?" And look, Hank is there in his chair, and he's holding the book with his feet. "Wait, Hank, Bobby's right. Listen to this." And the newsman says, "And so despite the efforts of the authorities, the robbers escaped. There seems to be little doubt that both were members of the mysterious mutant group known as the X-Men." Bobby says, "Oh yeah, I doubt it." "Quiet, Bobby," says Warren. "Let's make sure we don't miss any of this." Hank says, "It would seem most imperative that we enlighten the professor post haste." "Professor Xavier," says Hank, "pardon my unceremonious intrusion, sir, but the television has reported a most singular occurrence." "I know, Warren," says the professor. "I've already monitored that newscast mentally. In fact, I've telepathically commanded the others to join us as I finish the installation of this new Cerebro." And scant seconds later, the four X-Men arrive to talk to Professor X. And Bobby says, "We got your call, Professor. Then you know about those phony X-Men?" "Silence, all of you," he answers. "There's no time to waste on words. Observe the large screen on that wall." Warren says, "I've never seen the professor any grimmer than he is right now." And so projected on the wall, the radar image beam which I developed will detect any other mutants in the area and show us their forms as well. "Hey, that one looks familiar." "Indeed. Looks kind of like the Blob, doesn't he?" "Oh, and now it comes clearer." As well he should. It is clear that the massive figure is indeed the Blob, and the other, the machine reveals, is Unus. Unus, the untouchable? But the last time we fought, he promised to reform if we declined to imprison him. If he's forgotten his pledge, I'll stimulate his memory as the Beast. We still have the ray gun that we employed against him then. "Don't be too overconfident, Hank," says the professor. "After all, Unus may have discovered some way to counteract that weapon by now. In addition, I sense that a third entity has masterminded this entire scheme to discredit us, someone out of range of my Cerebro machine." Jean looks around and she says, "Professor, I just noticed Scott isn't here. Could anything have happened to him?" And Warren says, "Yeah, it isn't like old Gamma Gaze to miss a chance for action." Hank says someone had best investigate his absence. Bobby says, "I'm on my way there now. I'll find him." 15 seconds later, a breathless Bobby Blake reappears with disturbing news. He's got his note in his hand and he says, "Psych, he's gone. He walked out on us. He just left us a short goodbye note." Professor says, "I suspected as much. Scott has seemed terribly distraught these past few weeks, but no time to worry about that now. I must search my memory to discover which of our former foes might be guiding Unus and the Blob." Goodness, it seems as if the professor is not very concerned about Cyclops' departure. Well, we'll see how that fits into our story. And so he thinks and he reviews the names of all of their opponents: Magneto, Juggernaut, the Sentinels, Mastermind, Submariner. He says, "It's no use. Our adversary has set up a mental screen. There is one name which eludes me. We know what name that is, but he'll figure it out later. By your expressions, I see that our hidden enemy screen has affected you too. There is only one solution. I must build a mechanical memory inducer to quickly penetrate our foe's defenses. Meanwhile, and Warren says, for once we're way ahead of you, Professor. It'll be a relief to let my wings out of this getup anyway. Hank says, I'll get that ray gun. It may still prove efficacious. Yeah, says Bobby, maybe it'll even work. And of course, that's what efficacious means. It means it's efficient and will work. Bobby says, come on, let's move out. And poor Jean, she thinks, Scott, oh Scott, will I never see you again? I bet she will. What do you think? All right. Now the scene refocuses on someone else. This is the villain who has a mental screen that the professor has not been able to penetrate. Even as the teenage mutants prepare for battle, they cannot suspect that 2,000 miles away, one pair of eyes, cold, hostile, relentless, watches intently for their appearance. And he says, so the die is cast. Eunice and the Blob have unwittingly done my bidding, and a foolish world believes they are renegade X-Men, merely seeking worldly treasure. Little does anyone, even my two masquerading minions, realize that I, Lucifer, have in mind a purpose far more complex, far more sinister. All right, and I hope you remember the story of Lucifer when Professor X battled him underground and the X-Men came to his aid. And he continues his narrative. He says, for it was only days ago that while testing my ultra scanner, I discovered, and here is the Blob in a wrestling robe watching Eunice in the ring. And Blob says, untouchable, huh? When I get through with him, he'll be unmendable. The manager says, easy, Blob, I've heard of this guy. They say he's tough. Nobody's tougher than the Blob. I'll teach that rube to bring his circus into the same town where my carnival is playing. And the sign says $100 to anyone who can last 3 full minutes with Eunice, the untouchable, now touring with Superior Circus. All right, so they're at a circus. We've got two mutants who are wrestlers. Let's see what happens. And Lucifer continues, thus fate had placed within my reach 2 of the most powerful mutants in the world, and as I waited, biding my time, he watched. Eunice says, what's this? Had the local yokels run out of men, so they have to send hippos against me now? Blob says, I'm going to make you swallow them words, Buster. However, when the Blob leaps on him, he says, I didn't even reach him. He's protected by some kind of invisible shield. But there's nothing I can't smash through. Leastways, not till now. Eunice says, you blundering fatso. Now do you see why they call me the Untouchable? And Eunice thinks, yet any normal man would have bounced back. This guy was merely stopped. See, did you notice that? Instead of bouncing back, the Blob hit the screen and just stopped where he was. I don't get it, thinks the Blob. Nobody's halted me like that except the X-Men. Now there's an idea. What if this clown is a mutant like me? And Eunice says, he's getting up. I'd better make my move now. But Eunice fared no better than the Blob himself. Eunice jumps on the Blob and he thinks, I can't budge him. There's just one possible answer. And he speaks into the Blob's ear. Look, mister, what shall we say we call this match a draw? I've got something I want to talk to you about later. Blob says, you took the words right out of my mouth. Come over to my carnival in an hour and don't forget that $100. And so, soon afterward, the two Homo Superiors met again, little realizing that it was I, Lucifer, who had planted the idea in their minds. And so as they talk, Eunice says, "Then I was right, Blob. You are a mutant, just like me. I sensed it, somehow." "You and me both, chum," answers the Blob. "So how's about a cup of coffee while we see what else we got in common?" Before long, inside the Blob's trailer, the Blob says, "Then it's settled. Since we both got grudges against the X-Men, we'll frame them for our robberies." "Right," answers Eunice, "and when those costumed clowns come out to stop us, we'll polish 'em off once and for all." "Now you're talking," says the Blob. "I've been waiting a long time for this." Okay, Marvelites, that's enough of Lucifer's sanguinary soliloquies for the moment. Now, as his human puppets commit their second crime, the eyes of Cyclops are upon them. And so, now they're robbing an armored truck. And Eunice says, "Come on, brother X-Man, our club treasury can use this extra loot." And Blob answers, "I hear you talking, Mac. But look, there's the Cyclops walking by. He sees them and he thinks, two criminals dressed in X-Men uniforms. That bulky one looks like the Blob. And could the other be Eunice? Well, yes, indeed, he sure could." "Yet," thinks Cyclops, "this isn't my affair, for I've promised myself not to become an X-Man again. Not until I can control my awesome, potentially deadly power. Besides, surely the public realizes that they're not really X-Men." But he overhears the public. One of them says, "See, Mabel, I told you we should have run them crummy mutants out of town long ago. You were right, Herman. Next time I'll listen to you. Now we're on to them." And so the public is completely fooled by Eunice and the Blob. They think they really are X-Men, but that they're using their power to steal money. And so Cyclops realizes, well, the crowd has answered my question for me. I must heed the call, as long as all mutants are regarded as monsters. And so, exactly 1 minute later, Scott shows up in his X-Men uniform, and he says, "All right, you misguided misfits, one of the real X-Men is here. Now, which of you wants to be first to confess you're both phonies?" The public hears that, and he says, "Phonies? Does he mean these other two are just imposters?" And the other fellow says, "I bet they're all in on it. They're all willing to believe the worst." Eunice says, "Hey, partner, it's Cyclops. We thought you'd never make it, Psych, old buddy." Blob says, "Yeah, help us with this money sack, will you, kid?" And so, look, Eunice and the Blob are pretending that Cyclops is one of them. "Sure, friend, I'll give you a hand," says Cyclops, "or perhaps I should say an eye." And so he opens up his visor, zzzt, and his eye beam tears open the money sack. And he thinks, I don't dare unleash a blow directly at them until I am certain they are mutants, who would only be stunned by my power blasts. Well, that seems unusual. He knows that they're mutants. "You blame nuisance," says the Blob. "Now look what you've gone and done." Eunice says, "Just like always, if you can't lead a heist, you try to foul it up. I'm afraid we're going to have to punish you for this." And so Cyclops thinks, blast it, they're still keeping up the pretense that I'm one of them. I've got to make them blurt out the truth. And so he destroys this street lamp, makes it fall over on top of them. He says, "Here, you fakes, this ought to convince the crowd we're on opposite sides." And Blob says, "Don't worry, pal, your force field and my bulk will stop us from getting hurt. Sure, just like Psych knew it would." "Listen to them," says a bystander. "Do you think that human beings are just sport for the mutants? You said it, Pops. Let's all rush them together. Yes, if we let them continue to run amok, they may destroy the entire city. Get the youngest one first. He looks like the most dangerous." Cyclops realizes, as usual, a mob seldom makes the right decision. Now the crowd's turning on me. And so Scott has to run away. The crowd says, "Look, he's running away." Sure, those mutants are all cowards if you stand up to them. And Cyclops realizes, I've failed. Instead of helping, I've merely allowed them to discredit the X-Men further. But at least I learned who the bogus X-Men are. From the way they spoke, they must be the Blob and Eunice, which means I have to contact the others. Perhaps as a team, we can defeat the two evil mutants before it's too late. Meanwhile, the nefarious Lucifer is also upset, though for quite different reasons. And so he's angry. As he watches the scene, he says, "Have my plans all come to naught? Does only one X-Man dare to attack my costumed dupes? It cannot be. I have planned too carefully. They must attack as a team." But perhaps I spoke too soon, for there is the mutant known as the Angel. He flies toward Eunice and the Blob. And if Angel comes, can the other X-Men be far behind? And so here comes the Angel, and here come the other X-Men. The next second, Lucifer's ringing words come true, because here comes Iceman with his slide, and right behind him is Hank carrying the ray machine. And Hank says, "Don't worry, group, 'tis the Beast who gets first dibs at our two adversaries." The crowd says, "Holy Hannah, 3 more mutants." Angel says, "You can have them, Beastie Boy, but I'll be hovering nearby just in case." And the Blob says, "Well, it's about time you glory boys showed up. We've been waiting for you." Then, armed with the weapon which once before defeated the awesome Eunice, the anthropoid X-Men makes his play. Hank says, "It grieves me to the quick, feckless foe, to realize that you have disavowed your pledge of eternal honesty. Now prepare for the consequences of your imprudent act." "Quit yakking and fire away, fool," answers Eunice. "I don't have all day to listen to you." "As you will, my friend. One dose of this device and your mutant powers will no longer be yours to control." But Hank thinks, that's strange. He seems to be reacting differently than he did before. Eunice thinks, my nutty hunch was right. I am now immune to the Beast's blasted ray. And as the blinding glare fades away, here comes Eunice to attack. "Okay, you junior grade gorilla, now it's my turn. I've been waiting for this moment for more than a year." Hank says, "A true paragon of patience." Well, what's Eunice going to do? Well, we'll have to wait to find out, because the scene shifts back to Lucifer. Neither of them suspects that I am responsible for Eunice's immunity, and also for his hunch that the ray would no longer affect him, for I possess powers that the world can scarcely imagine. "Have a care, Eunice. Violence can be so plebeian." And Eunice says, "Stand still, you blasted mutant monkey." So he says, "Get him, Blob." Beast says, "Your turn, Iceman. The stage is set." Blob says, "I'll take out this pest." "That's it, Blob. Just a little closer," as Iceman shoots out his ice to attack the Blob. "Oof, he made the sidewalk icy. I can't stand up," says Eunice. And Blob falls down too. Says, "This won't stop us for long, you blamed brat." "Maybe not," says Iceman, "but it'll slow you down anyhow." Suddenly, however, an attack comes from a new quarter as this woman swings her umbrella. Whack! But unfortunately, she hits the wrong fella. "Madam, I beseech you," says Hank, "we're on your side. You can't fool us. You mutants are all menaces." "Yipes," says Iceman, "now what do we do?" as more of the mob attacks him. Meanwhile, what of the high-flying Angel? Up here, officer, see the nice birdie? Angel flies around trying to divert attention from Hank and Bobby. Come down, Angel, says the policeman. Don't force me to fire. Okay, if you won't surrender, I'll have to try to wing you. And so the policemen actually shoot their guns, patak, patak, attacking Angel. In my case, that's a great choice of words. Just the same, I'm glad the prof had me spend an hour practicing evasion tactics this morning. And so the Angel is able to fly around and evade the bullets. And then, as below, the mob says, scatter, here come the rest of them. And the Blob says, you better believe it. And Eunice says, we'll finish off the beast first, then the fudge sickle freak. And the beast says, we're sorely beset by friend and foe alike. Alas, alas. And Iceman says, beast, look out. Yow, what was that? Whoom. It's Cyclops, he's back. And so this blast is aimed at the Blob and Eunice. And so up top, Iceman and the Beast say, psych, talk about a sight for sore eyes. You showed up just in time. So I see, says Cyclops, but we can talk later. Right now we'd better split. That crowd's still angry. With your usual perspicacity, Cyclops, you've properly evaluated the situation. Let's depart indeed. And so the crowd says, look, one of them blasted a hole right through the pavement, and two others fell right through it. Thunk! And so the Blob and Eunice fell, and they landed on a subway train. I've been ridden out of town on a rail before, but this is ridiculous, says Eunice. Shut up, says the Blob, and keep your head down. We'll be back. All right. So, Eunice and the Blob escape, and Cyclops, Iceman, and Hank, and the Angel have to escape the angry mob. So above ground, the bona fide X-Men make a hurried exit. Angel says, it's great to see some action again, but where have you been, Scotty boy? That's my business, Angel, answers the Cyclops. And look, we see the Beast bounce, bounce, bounce against the walls as he makes his exit, and then Iceman is on his usual slide. Scott says, say, where's Marvel Girl? I've been wondering that too. But Iceman says she had to stay behind to help the professor. We'll fill you in on the way. While in the hidden lab, so, says Lucifer, the one I seek most, still closets himself in secrecy, huh? But Lucifer knows not the meaning of defeat. There are other ways. Then abruptly, he looks above. He says, ah, my Mento wave receiver indicates that Professor Xavier has already penetrated my mental screen. He cannot suspect that I desired him to find me, that in locating me, he has now sealed his own doom. And so wherever Lucifer is hiding, Professor X has finally broken through that mental screen. He's located Lucifer. What will happen next? Look, Lucifer is out in the desert, and here is a mesa with some hidden weapon. Moments later, at a certain point in the great desert in the southwestern portion of the United States, a strange, ominous dome appears from within the very heart of a craggy mesa. Yet no eyes see and no voice reports this awesome sight, one which may well determine the fate of Earth itself. Always so dramatic. And look at this weapon that's rising up out of the mesa. As the opalescent gases which prevent its detection from the air fade away, an awesome structure halts its strange, silent ascent. Then two massive panels part to reveal a gigantic cannon which almost instantly fires a blast of energy out into the atmosphere. Zzz. And from below, we hear Lucifer say, "And now the time has come. Although I failed in my scheme to locate Xavier, he has found me. That was his first mistake in dealing with me, and it shall be his last as well. Now my potent beam will ride his own mental waves back to their source, back to the professor himself, and then the first part of my task will be completed. The world will be ours." So, Lucifer has sent off a great mental wave, and he's going to locate the professor, being guided by the professor's own mental wave himself. And so Lucifer expects to defeat Professor X and dominate the world. Well, that's what they all think, isn't it? Everybody thinks they can dominate the world, but the X-Men are there to prevent it. And so we'll come back and find out how they defeat Lucifer this time. All right, can you wait until then? Well, we'll have to. I'll talk to you later. Love you. Bye-bye.